Welcome back to the Many Toys Of, the show in which we go over the action figure history of various Transformers characters. And this time around, as a celebration for 4,000 subscribers here on YouTube, it's time we look at the original flying Autobot, Jetfire. Before we begin, a big thank you to Just a Dude on the Internet 2721, YT Mean 3121, O Prime Edits, Larry C. Aircraft, Cornboy 3227, Sydney Pote 9132, Power the Primes 716, Christian Over, and the hundreds of people who participated in our 4,000 subscriber poll, over 40% of which voted for Jetfire. Now, how would I describe Jetfire? Brave, dependable, reliant, consistent, intelligent. Quite frankly, across almost every universe, Jetfire is an ideal. He is the perfect representation of what an Autobot could be and perhaps even should be. Now, admittedly, sometimes his ego gets in the way of some of his more noble attributes, but there's very little separating him from, dare I say, Optimus Prime in terms of being the perfect hero. Besides that, he's massive, powerful, he's able to fly, and he can take most of the Autobots across the world in just a matter of minutes. In some ways, he's indispensable, especially to the early 84 cast. And even though most of what we associate with Jetfire comes from Marvel, even in the G1 cartoon, we see the features of Jetfire that we would grow to love. Yeah, he is one of the most powerful of bots. He's one of the most intelligent, too. But he's also endlessly noble. He's able to have an almost Shakespearean dialect when he speaks. And the fact that he found friendship with a character like Starscream speaks to just how likable the guy was. I mean, Starscream hates everybody, but even he kinda liked Jetfire. And nowadays, he can be many other things past that. He can be second in command to the Autobots. He can be an old codger. But a thing that is always treated the same is Jetfire is treated with reverence. He is an Autobot to take note of. Sometimes for good reasons, sometimes for bad reasons, but he's never just a part of the crowd. Jetfire has had many toys, but only one could be his first, and back in 1985, we got the Autobot Air Guardian Jetfire. Just look at this guy, completely unlike any other Transformer of the day. Highly posable, at least for an 80s robot. A great transformation, the flight pack gives him a unique shape. In robot mode, his proportions and deco are just incredibly striking. The big gun gives him firepower, the helmeted look gives him a good, noble knight aesthetic. And the fact that he is such a clean Transformer put the Decepticon jets to shame. That said, you know how I said this guy doesn't really look like a Transformer? That's because this is not a Takara Tomy boy. This guy was made by Macross. Macross was an incredible competitor to Diaclone, and would continue to be a competitor to Transformers, both in Japan and the United States. Especially when Macross became Robotech here in the United States. You see, Hasbro licensed this figure for 1 year to be released in the Transformers line. Now, they licensed a lot of characters like that. Look at Shockwave, look at Skylynx. The difference was, they didn't actually license this guy to appear in media. So, when Jetfire showed up in a commercial fighting Shockwave, Macross got very mad and sued Hasbro. And then eventually, as time went on, Harmony Gold, the current owners of Robotech, would sue Hasbro at any given opportunity over the use of Jetfire. If you've ever been curious why Skyfire exists, why that design exists, why the name Skyfire was even made when we already had Jetfire, it's because Hasbro was doing its best to avoid many frivolous lawsuits. Nowadays, Hasbro put Harmony Gold in its place. We can have Jetfire every single day if we want it. But that doesn't change the fact that for many years, it was actually kind of risky to do a G1 Jetfire or a G1 Skyfire entirely because of this original debacle. Of course, that controversy also made sure there were no more G1 Jetfires at all. No decoys, no Takara release, nothing. Until we get to 1995, 10 years later in G2, we got our second Jetfire, and it was a Cyberjet. So, admittedly, this is kind of sad. You took one of the most unique jets in all the Transformers and turned him into what every jet in G2 turned into. It's still pretty solid. I like the deco here a lot, but there's just not a lot connecting him to Jetfire. This was definitely more of a G2 named up than anything else, but hey, at least it's still a good toy, highly posable for the day, a good transformation, and the deco, again, is super solid. In 2002, we'd be introduced to our second version of Jetfire, that being Armada Jetfire. Here, we are introduced to the second-in-command of the Autobots that have been serving with Optimus for millennia. More importantly, the two of them shared a special connection, the ability to combine into Jet Optimus, one of the most powerful Autobots of all. Jetfire was a bit MIA at first. He wasn't able to get to Earth as quickly as Hotshot and Red Alert could, but once he did arrive, he immediately saved Optimus and the others from a heavy Decepticon attack before resuming his position as second-in-command. The Autobots all universally respected Jetfire as their boss, even though occasionally Hotshot got a little bit bummed out by just how much of a cowboy Jetfire could be. If you were to compare him to, say, Ultra Magnus is a great second-in-command that's a little bit stodgy, a little bit prickly. Jetfire is a great second-in-command that's a little bit erratic, and a little bit, let's say, egotistical at times. But that doesn't change the fact that his bravery and sheer force of personality made him a great counter to Optimus. And the show ends with Jetfire and Hotshot being entrusted to lead the Autobots from that day forward, or at least until Energon.
Identify yourself. You can call me Jetfire, second in command of the Autobots.
Armada Jetfire is such a delightful toy. Articulation suffers, sure, but the design is just incredible. I love the massive wings over his shoulders, and the good, stocky proportions ensure that Jetfire has an incredibly tough look. His big gun is a little bit goofy, but at the same time that big gun becomes the thruster of his space shuttle mode. And I love this space shuttle. It is massive, and it can actually house a number of minicons. Get Commenter on the go, and he's able to open up and have a complete viewing deck. Jetfire essentially becomes a playset for your minicons. And then if you want another gimmick, why don't you combine him with Optimus to get Jet Optimus? This makes a somewhat iffy Optimus Prime toy actually rather playable. Jetfire actually gives Optimus articulation. All these things together lead to this being one of the more impressive Jetfire toys, especially of his early toy career, and one of my personal favorite toys in all of Armada. 2003 would just have a lot of love for Armada Jetfire. To go down the list, there would be the Micron Legend Jetfire released in Takara Tomy markets. There was the Power Lynx Jetfire. There was the Battle for the Matrix Jetfire that was a Black Friday exclusive to Kmart. There was the Kimpai Jetfire, which is a solid gold version of the guy that came with Optimus Prime. And if that wasn't enough, you also had Built to Rule Jetfire, which, my word, I never knew Legos could look that bad. And finally, Energon Jetfire. Yeah, there were literally so many Jetfires this year that we bled over to the next toy line. And Energon Jetfire, I mean, he looks good. I quite like him. His shoulders are great. I love the chest design. The colors are a little bit more boring, but it's still a great looking design, and the space shuttle mode looks a little bit more combat oriented now. For all those reasons, I think that this was a great upgrade to Armada Jetfire, but I still personally prefer the Armada Boy. Oh yeah, there was also the Roadbuster Skyfire multi-pack in 2003. Never forget, never forget. To put a bow on Energon Jetfire, you could have gone the Skyfire Sonic in 2004. This was the Takara Tomy release of the Hasbro Overcast toy, but it was supposed to continue being Skyfire, aka Jetfire. We would also get Cybertron Jetfire in 2004. Now, technically this is the Armada guy again, but whereas Energon Jetfire, you could definitely see it, this Jetfire acts and looks entirely different. So I figure it's time to reintroduce the guy again. Here, he was a Nebulan adventurer. Yes, he had a little bit of an Australian accent, don't you know that's actually how Nebulans speak? But he was also a little bit more goofy, and he was able to banter with Prime a little bit more often. Admittedly, he kind of lost his role as second-in-command to Vector Prime. If you have two Primes running around, they're probably going to talk to each other a lot more often than they talk to you. But Jetfire continued to be a very fun Autobot, though he did eventually kind of get lost in the sea of characters that was Cybertron. I don't know what it is, but there's something about Cybertron Jetfire that all these years later I still just adore. The green is so good. Two tones of it mixed with silver and red, it's a great looking plane. past that, the proportions are incredibly solid. I love the turbine shoulders, I love the wings above those shoulders, I love how the cockpit winds up becoming the chest. The head sculpt is incredibly sharp and actually does harken back to Energon Jetfire, and it gives you an incredibly impressive feeling bigger toy. I quite like Jetfire, there's no denying. I'm always going to prefer Armada Jetfire to this guy, but Cybertron Jetfire? I can make time for Cybertron Jetfire. Going into 2005, you'd be able to get the Burger King Kids Meal Jetfire. Simple little guy, but he's looking good. There was also the Legends of Cybertron Jetfire, which, despite being a tenth the size of the original Jetfire, a lot of the design translated incredibly well here. Of course, 2006 was going to be a big year for Jetfire. We got the Titanium Jetfire. This was our first ever redo of the G1 design, and it is rough. He has a hard time standing up, he has a hard time keeping his arms up, he has a hard time transforming, he has a hard time existing. Honestly, same Jetfire. The jet mode looks really cool. I do like it for a Cybertronian jet mode. The robot mode, though? I mean, it's trying to do the Macross look, it really is, and for a long time that was as close as we were ever going to get. But I would honestly say, if you want this guy, just be careful. There are known breakage issues with this guy, especially in his hips, and even if you don't break him, he's not all that fun to play with. There was the Classics Legends Jetfire. This was a redeco of Cybertron Thundercracker. Looks okay. But what's the point in denying it? 2006's biggest toy for Jetfire was the Classics Jetfire. Look at this beautiful thing. Not only do you get two distinct robot modes, you get both a more Macross style and a more Skyfire G1 cartoon style, but multiple accessories including missile launchers, the flight pack, the helmet, the gun, all those things can come off or be put back on or rearranged. The jet mode is just perfect. A wonderful marriage of Macross jet and G1 cartoon space shuttle to give you a undeniably great looking jet. The robot mode does have some issues. The posability is great for the day, and all the accessories help immensely. The accessories are also weighing the figure down quite a bit, and Jetfire can be a bit back heavy when they have the flight pack on. But sometimes that's the price of beauty. I'm sorry guys, but if you were to end this list in 2006, this was the best Jetfire. And it was also the best Jetfire for like a decade going forward. It was an awesome figure. After a 2006 like that, 2007 was going to be a little bit of a slowdown year for Jetfire. For one, you could get the Jollibee Jetfire. This is just another Happy Meal toy. The Cybertron Legends Jetfire would be released in a 4-pack alongside Optimus Prime, Soundwave, and Megatron. And finally, you could get Classics Jetfire and Classics Grimlocked packed together in Asian markets like Hong Kong and Singapore. Going into 2008, Classics Jetfire would be redecoed into Henkei Skyfire. Of course, the biggest thing to happen to Jetfire in 2008 was actually the release of an entirely new version of him, that being Animated Jetfire. It would be a while before we would see this guy in animation, but once we did, we'd see that him and his twin brother Jetstorm were prodigies, some of the youngest members of the Elite Guard ever, and always under the direct command of Sentinel Prime. Even better, they were flying Autobots, prototypes of flying Autobots, and they could combine into either a Superjet or Safeguard, one of the most powerful of Autobots. The toys are, admittedly, a little bit rough. Safeguard is easily the strongest mode. He has wonderful proportions and looks very, very in line with the animated aesthetic. But then you have Jetfire and Jetstorm, who look a little bit off. Massive hips, tiny waists, small arms, big legs. But I'm kind of okay with this. Jetfire and Jetstorm, keep in mind, in the fiction, were rebuilt almost entirely from the ground up to be prototype jets. And Perceptor even said that this was near impossible to do. The idea of them looking incredibly rough, almost more like they're the skeletal frames of jets, actually kind of works for the fiction. And for that reason, I'm willing to cut them some slack. Yeah, of course Jetfire and Jetstorm look rough. They weren't meant to be jets, they were meant to be buggies, and we have tried to turn them by force into jets. Thank God they can turn to Safeguard, and thank God that toy still looks incredible. 2009 would give us yet another major version of Jetfire, because in Revenge of the Fallen, we discover the secrets of the SR-71 Blackbird in the Smithsonian. You see, Jetfire was one of the original Decepticons, one of the original followers of the Fallen, far back in the ancient history of Cybertron. However, he became disenfranchised with the Fallen and the constant cutthroat nature of the Decepticons, leading to him betraying them and joining the 13 Primes, well, the remaining 13 Primes, which means he was also there when all of his leaders gave up their lives to conceal the Matrix of Leadership. Jetfire ever since has been trapped on Earth, eventually falling into a coma due to a lack of Energon, and his SR-71 Blackbird mode was brought into the Smithsonian, and it was there that Sam Witwicky used a fragment of the Allspark to bring Jetfire back online, showing the glory of one of the most ancient of Cybertronians, and he farted a parachute and knocked over a building, and then they were in a desert for a little bit, and then, get this, right, that desert was right outside the Smithsonian, so I guess Washington, D.C. is a desert, but then they actually go to a desert because Jetfire has a space bridge, and then Scorponok, ate his guts, I think, and then he ripped out his own heart, and Optimus Prime wore him like a suit for 5 minutes. You know, Jetfire sounds a lot more grand when you just look at the backstory, doesn't he? Hey, he got some good toys, though. For one, there was the Legends class Jetfire, and for such a tiny bot, I love how much detail they packed into this, and it's a pretty good Blackbird. The Blackbird's one of the only jets I actually know anything about because, hey, it's a cool jet. And even though the shapes aren't perfect for a Legends scale figure, they're pretty close to it. Even better, it can kinda combine with Legends class Optimus to give you a very tiny Jet Prime. Kinda cool. A slight redeco of this mold would have been available in the War for the Skies multi-pack exclusive to Kmart. Of course, the toy to talk about when it comes to 2009 is the Leader Class Jetfire, and by today's standards, he's not great. He has a lot of kibble. Unfortunately, he has a very hard time with articulation. He needs that cane to stay balanced due to the hunch they built into the robot mode. The deco is somewhat hit or miss. The sculpting is also somewhat hit or miss. And even though I like the details, like the head sculpt, the robot mode ultimately is just a bit too compromised. But then you take into account the gorgeous SR-71 Blackbird mode. That's possibly the greatest Blackbird mode I've ever seen for a Transformer. And you have Jet Prime. And Jet Prime was the reason to get this Jetfire. It took one of the best Optimus Primes ever, and gave it even more things to do. In Takara Tomy Asian markets, you could have gotten Optimus Prime and Jetfire together in a 2-pack, which, that's just a perfect deal, really.
My father, while he was a wheel, the first wheel, do you know what he transformed into? No. Nothing!
There's a fast-action battler of Jetfire that I don't know what's going on there. What's he doing with his legs? It looks like he's just begging someone to come over and kick him around the middle, like, oh, you think you can hurt me? Get me right there. Get me in the weak ones. I like that fast-action battler Jetfire. That's the one I want. There was a mega power bot of Jet Power Optimus.
Who's winning?
The Decepticons.
Well, I changed size to the Autobots.
What do you mean change size?
Robot Replicas did a non-transforming Jetfire, and it's just beautiful. Burger King gave you a toy known as Ultimate Prime.
So stop judging me! I have issues of my own, and it started with my mother!
Basic Fun gave a small, but still decently articulated version of Jet Prime as a keychain. Jet Prime would have also came in the Battle of the Fallen multi-pack from Robot Heroes.
Stick the landing!
Going back to G1 Jetfire, you could have gone the Diamond Select Toys mini bust of the guy, as well as a Macross-inspired variant. And to wrap up the year, Transformers Gum did a version of Jetfire very much inspired by the Classics version. Going into 2010, you would have Takara Tomy repaint the original Classics Jetfire into Dark Skyfire. And if this guy looks familiar to you, it's because BotCon repurposed this as Shattered Glass Jetfire. In the world of animated, there was the Takara Tomy release of Jetfire, as well as a 2-pack for Safeguard. Both of these would have been released in Japan. There was a Jetfire RPM that, in all honesty, that's a really phallic shape when it stands up. Oh, good, it's now in a 2-pack with Megatron, and it's ribbed. You know what? Sure, I guess we just needed 3 of these things. Speedstars also did this Jetfire, and there's 4 because there was another 2-pack with Megatron. Why does Megatron want to keep getting packed with this thing? Sticking with Revenge of the Fallen, you could have gotten another version of Legends Jetfire, now with all Spark Blue in the Victory of the Fallen 5-pack. And finally, to bring 2010 to a close, the Easy Collection would have released Jetfire in the Takara Tomy markets.
Is that robot civil war still going on?
Going into 2011, the Easy Collection would have released the real color version of Jetfire. Even though Jetfire was not in Dark of the Moon for obvious reasons, there was still a re-release of both the Leader Class Jetfire and Leader Class Optimus in Dark of the Moon packaging, both here in the United States and in Asian markets.
If the second ones had their way, they'd destroy the whole universe.
Going into 2012, Jetfire would have a go in bot shots, and yeah, he looks pretty cute. I guess the mold was so good they had to do a second version, because in 2012 there was also a 3-pack with Jetfire, Skyquake, and Powerglide. To wrap up 2012, you would have also had the Be Cool White Jet, also known as Jetfire, released in Japan. This was just the Takara Tomy version of the bot shots. Going into 2013, there would have been a lot of convention exclusives. Starting with Cybertron Con 2013, you could have gone the Henkei Skyfire, but with more metallic red paint being used, and a Decepticon logo on the wings. Botshot Jetfire came out again in the Polar Assault team alongside Optimus, Bumblebee, Mirage, and Ironhide. And to wrap 2013 up, if you had gone to San Diego Comic-Con 2013, you could have gone the Autobot Jetfire from G.I. Joe and the Transformers. This is a G.I. Joe Sky Striker that's been heavily remolded to look like Jetfire, complete with the flight pack. Man, that's a lot of Jetfires, and we got even more to go. But why don't we take a brief pit stop right here and talk a little bit about third party. For the Masterpiece Collector, the main third-party guy to know about has to be Fans Toys Phoenix. And out of every Fans Toys toy I've ever messed with, Phoenix is honestly my favorite. A great feeling transformation, a really solid robot, a great looking jet. I'm almost willing to say that this one's better than the official Jetfire that came out a few years ago. An incredibly solid toy with great paint and great feeling joints. It can really show the magic of third party when you get the right team on the right project. For the Chug Collector, there is the Deca Toys version, and even though this guy is a little bit stiff in the joints and a little bit boxy in terms of aesthetics, it's still a really nice looking Jetfire. I especially like how the jet mode came out. Toy World Skyburst is interesting because that's Revenge of the Fallen Jetfire, except he transforms into a battleship. That's so cool, man. I love the World War II series they do. And even though Jetfire as a boat's a little bit weird, it also kind of makes sense because he's supposed to kind of be his own guy away from the rest of the group.
I told you my name was Jetfire!
For the Legends crowd, you have the New Age Firefox, and he looks just great. New Age always making some of the best Legends scale figures ever. Of course, Iron Factory Syngus is another great Legends Jetfire, this one much more IDW inspired, and it would have been one of the first Legends scale Jetfires ever made by third parties, so show some respect to your elders. X2 Toys Sky Crusher is pretty interesting, though unfortunately the one experience I've ever had with the toy, it snapped. I watched some reviews, some people say that there is some looseness in these joints, but the design does look nice. Mechaform Sky Guardian though, that guy felt pretty solid to me. And I've seen, again, a couple of reviews in which people confirm he's a pretty good feeling Jetfire, and I love the look here. Meg Toys Cross Dimensions, now that line I loved. Their Optimus and their Megatron, some of the most unique takes on those characters ever. Beautiful toys. And Buster Wing, their Jetfire, also incredible. Taking a lot of notes out of the Energon Wing Saber school of thought. Or, well, honestly, Armada Jetfire as well. And giving you a great Jet Optimus look. Even better, there is a stealth version if you want more Revenge the Fallen Jetfire feel. Wonderful toys, and probably my favorite third-party Jetfire ever, if I'm being honest. But finally, we have entered Elysium. We've talked about some good Jetfires, we've talked about some bad Jetfires, we've talked about some Jetfires that break, but let's talk about the fans' hobby Skyflame. Armada Jetfire given the masterpiece treatment. I said Buster Wing was my favorite. I lied. I lied so hard. This Jetfire is my favorite. If I could only get one Jetfire from this entire list, It's this one. It's Armada Jetfire, given better articulation, modern aesthetics, and a massive frame. He can still combine with Naval Commander, their Armada Optimus. He's just perfect. He's just perfect, like everything Fans Hobby does. I cannot wait to get my hands on this toy eventually. And that's a wrap on third-party Jetfire. Now, I've had some people ask, why wouldn't Jetfire get more toys in third-party? It's because of Harmony Gold. It's almost entirely because of Harmony Gold. It's because Harmony Gold is a scummy, scummy company, and they look for any opportunity they can to sue anyone they can over Jetfire. That's not just Hasbro. They've sued companies like 3-0. They've tried to sue companies like Super 7. Keep in mind that these suits have been rejected with prejudice, meaning that they can't even legally start these lawsuits anymore, and yet they continue to try to, because, I don't know, Robotech's been dead since the 80s, and the heads of Harmony Gold are just the scummiest of all the scum in the scum that makes up CEO boardrooms. In 2014, there was the Leader Class Thrilling 30 Jetfire, and I love this guy. In some ways, this might be my favorite Jetfire. It's very IDW inspired, looks just like Jetfire did in Dawn of the Autobots and Transformers Robots in Disguise, and you have so many great features here. Not only do you have a great looking Skyfire mode, but you add on that vacuum metallized flight pack and the mask, and now you have more of a toy Jetfire. There's also 2 distinct jet modes, a great combination gimmick with the guns. It's just a fun toy. If you were in Malaysia, there was a chance that you could get one of the 3 silver Jetfires made from the Leader Class guy. This one's kind of weird. Creo did a version of Skyfire that they had to call Jet Wash. Yeah, this was another Harmony Gold thing, but hey, he looks cool. Hero Master Jetfire looked really solid for a Hero Master. Again, went much more for the Macross style of Jetfire, but I think it's for the better. To bring 2014 to a close, Legends would send out the Takara Tomy version of Jetfire, and yeah, this is the best the Thrilling 30 mold ever looked. Just incredible. I especially love the deco in the jet mode. Going into 2015, we'd actually have a couple of Creons to go over again. For one, the Jet Wash Microchanger was now officially Skyfire, at least in Takara Tomy markets, and Jetfire was included in the Creon class of 85, which was released at San Diego Comic-Con 2015. It was a big year for Jetfire in 2016. Sure, he only had one toy, but that one toy was the Q Transformers Jetfire! Oh, look at him! Oh, he's using the Starscream molding! That means that him and Starscream can be buddies forever again! Oh, they look so good together! Oh, and he's a little chubby guy! Look at him! His cockpit turns into a little tummy! Oh, I love the Q Transformers. I want this one so bad. I wish I could have any of them, but look at this one especially. He looks too good. In 2017, the Cyber series would do Jetfire, and it gives you a pretty good feeling robot. It's a retool of the Starscream, sure, but it works, especially with the new deco choices. Thrilling 30 Jetfire came back around, but this time he was in the Revolution set. This was released at San Diego Comic-Con 2017, and it would have included Matt Tracker from Mask, Action Man, Lyric from Visionaries, Roadblock from G.I. Joe, Rom the Space Knight, a Dire Wraith, and 9 Micronauts. That is an insane box set. In 2018, we need to say hello to an old friend, because the original Leader Class Revenge of the Fallen Jetfire came back from Movie the Best.
Itchy, wretched, rusty, my ass!
This was also the year that Prime 1 Studio sent out Jet Power Optimus Prime. That statue looks insane. Going into 2019, we'd get what I would honestly call the greatest Jetfire of all time. That would be the War for Cybertron Siege Jetfire. The first Commander class figure, he towers over basically all of your Transformers, short of Titans, and he's perfect. He's Skyfire. He is just the cartoon Skyfire design, finally done accurately in toy form. His jet mode is just perfect. Even better, if you have Titan Masters running around, they can actually ride in the jet mode, or they can deploy from the jet mode. And even if you don't like the Skyfire design, this figure comes with so many add-on parts to give you more of a Jetfire, with a helmet, an alternate chest, the backpack, all the extra guns. But I'll be honest, I do use this guy as Skyfire more often. But then there's the little features. The fact that the Decepticon logo can become an Autobot logo. The fact that when you open the hand, there's no way to hold the gun, but when you close it, a little port pops out of the palm so he can hold the gun. Little things like that make this figure look and feel so much more premium than what he actually is. It was a love letter to Jetfire. One that is so clearly made by people who adored this character and dreamed of making the perfect version of the cartoon design. Joining Siege Jetfire in 2019 would have been the Studio Series Jetfire, and this guy is pretty solid. I mean, the design still suffers a good bit. He still has a hard time standing up, and yeah, he doesn't really look good holding his accessories in any way, but it is the most accurate version of that robot mode, and that jet mode's just a work of art. Of course, in 2019, we also got a completely new version of Jetfire, that being the Cyberverse Jetfire. And honestly, this guy reminds me more of Depth Charge than anyone else. A maverick Autobot who's constantly hunting down his archenemy Skybite, and is willing to allow any collateral damage, even killing other Autobots, if it means finally getting rid of Skybite. In some ways, it's the most different Skyfire has ever been, but it does keep him as this loner character, and one that the other Autobots have to be aware of, even if now it's more out of fear than out of respect. That is to say, the character is. The toys, not so much. I mean, look at the Spark Armor Jetfire. It's a great little guy, don't get me wrong, but it's undoubtedly very G1 coded. I do like the jet mode a lot here, and the combined gimmick with the tank is actually really solid, one of the better combined forms out of any of these little guys. And it gives you a great feeling Jetfire that's still very at home on a G1 shelf. Tiny Turbochanger Jetfire looked pretty good too. I especially love how the wings turned out. 2019 would have seen a third Cyberverse Jetfire with the Warrior class version of the guy. And I'll be honest, even though I think the jet mode looks a lot better here, I think the robot mode actually looks worse than the Spark Armor one. And to say goodbye to Cyberverse Jetfire the same year we got him, the final toy for him was also released in 2019. It was a McDonald's Happy Meal toy. In 2020, we would get the Reaction Skyfire. This is Super 7's attempt to give us a cartoon-accurate version of the guy at 5 points of articulation. Sadly, he's not all that much taller than the other ones. I was kind of hoping he'd have a little bit of height on them. In 2021, we get a Funko Pop-Up Jetfire, and look at that! It's actually the toy design! That's sick! Going into 2022, you could get the Siege Jetfire once again. It was re-released due to high demand, and that would not be the final time that would happen, because everybody wants a Jetfire. However, the mold would make a second go as Shattered Glass Jetfire. Now, I mentioned earlier we would talk about this guy now. That's because the original Shattered Glass run didn't actually touch on Skyfire, he just kind of showed up sometimes. Here, he was actually really explored. Whereas the original Jetfire always felt a little bit separated from the other Autobots and Decepticons, but was still noble, here, Jetfire was consumed by his loneliness, and the only friend he had was Shattered Glass Starscream. And when Starscream was killed, Jetfire just lost himself. It's actually kind of sad to see Jetfire. You're aware that he's intelligent because of the original Jetfire. You're aware that he could be doing so much more, but he's so consumed by his own self-resentment and the hatred he has for others that he can't see past that. Losing Starscream broke him. Like, it's not that he's depressed, he's not grieving. Starscream was the only time he actually felt happy. And losing Starscream meant, well, happiness was no longer an option for Jetfire. The toy, of course, is incredible. It's the Commander-class Jetfire again, but with a great redeco. Admittedly, I wish there was more purple here. Maybe if there was purple on the shoulders. However, the purple that is here is doing a lot to help save the deco. As for the black, it's all incredibly solid, and I like the slight bow damage that there is around the arms and the chest especially. Going into 2023, we would get Masterpiece Skyfire. This guy is 14 inches tall in robot mode, an absolute behemoth of a toy that can still do the girl walk, and has a great jet mode. And even more interestingly, he comes with little guys. He comes with a mini Optimus, a mini Jazz, and a mini Wheeljack that can all just hang out inside of him. And in robot mode, he towers over most of the other Masterpiece figures. It's the most cartoon-accurate version of Masterpiece Jetfire to date, and yeah, I'll admit it, I kind of go back and forth as if I like this guy or the Fans Toys one more. I still think I prefer Fans Toys, but this Jetfire is incredible, honestly one of the best official Masterpieces ever. In our current year of 2024, the only Jetfire to talk of is the re-release of Siege Jetfire again. Yeah, they've had to re-release the guy twice, because like I said, everybody wants a Jetfire. Finally guys, we just have to look to the future of 2025, in which we're going to be getting Masterpiece Shattered Glass Jetfire, and he looks incredible, because of course he looks incredible. You're taking a great mold and giving it a great deco. And that's it. You know, I was kind of expecting there to be more. Like, don't get me wrong, Jetfire's had a huge amount of toys, an absolutely titanic amount, but I don't know, it just kind of feels like he needed more? I'm in a weird spot where he's had so many. It's similar to Jazz, where this guy is such a massive name in the fandom, so many people adore him, so many people would list him as their favorite character. It's kind of weird that he doesn't have more toys. Like, I expected this to be hundreds, but no. Ultra Magnus has more toys than him. Shockwave has more toys than him. And it kind of feels like Jetfire might be a bigger deal than both of them, potentially? But at the same time, I think it's because Jetfire is always a massive name. Keep in mind with what we talked about the Metroplex video last week. Jetfire, when he comes out, is almost always leader class or commander class. Even the handful of Voyagers he's had, he was one of the bigger Voyagers you could get, or had more accessories than other Voyagers. I think it's the fact that every time you make a Jetfire, looking at this from the Hasbro and Takara Tomy perspective, every time they make a Jetfire, he has to be big. He has to be impressive. That's almost like Jetfire's defining trait physically as a character is the sheer size of him. And as a result, maybe that has made it to where Jetfire needs to be more of a special release. Every few years we get a new Jetfire, it's massive, we all love him. But I'd also say, aside from some issues with movie Jetfires, Jetfire's had a great run as a character. All of his figures were figures that were able to stand the test of time for years, even decades. And it's not like any of them have ever needed a replacement. A Classics Jetfire still looks really good on a Generation shelf today. A Thrilling 30 Jetfire looks really good on a Generation shelf today. It's not that Jetfire gets upgrades or improvements, so much as lateral moves. A Jetfire that might more align with your aesthetic preferences. And past that, Jetfire is just an easy character to love. Ultra Magnus has the issue of being too militaristic. He's too regulated. He's too filled with protocol. That's the reason why he can't be the leader. Great for military operations, not great for times of peace. Jetfire as a character is the opposite. He's excellent for times of peace. He's wonderful as a vice president. He's esoteric, he's erratic, he's personable. He's a little bit arrogant, sure, but he's also very, very fun to speak with. Where Jetfire suffers as a character is he's not all that military-minded. Even in Armada and the Unicron trilogy as a whole, where he is a military second-in-command, he's a little too much of a cowboy. Whereas Ultra Magnus is ruled by protocol, Jetfire is kind of ruled by just whatever he wants to do. And usually what he wants to do is the most moral thing, but that does kind of chafe when you're supposed to be in the military chain of command. Maybe that's the reason why we don't see him show up in fiction all that often, is that type of role of the second-in-command, it can be filled by him, it can be filled by Ultra Magnus, it can be filled by Jazz. And Jetfire, just like his toys, when he shows up in fiction, he has to make a big impression. But guys, I'll ask you, which was your favorite Jetfire? And is there a Jetfire you're trying to track down right now? Now, we have a lot of characters to go over still, but we're going to get to each and every one of them on that list before too long. In terms of next week, we're going to do Airazor. Airazor was supposed to be the Thanksgiving episode, but, well, I want to give thanks to 4,000 people subscribing to me and hundreds of people voting in my poll. So please take this Jetfire episode. Airazor will be next week and it'll be a lot of fun. and we already have a plan going into December to do the other characters. Thank you guys so much for watching, and hey, we'll see what we get up to next time.